Happy Sunday, everybody. Happy Cinco de Mayo. Happy Kentucky Derby weekend. Happy David Sanders returns to Ohio State weekend. Andrew Ellis over there. I'm Jeremy Birmingham. This is Talking Stuff, the Ohio State recruiting podcast. On the podcast, Andrew, did you have tacos on Sunday?
I am embarrassed to tell you that we went to Buffalo Wild Wings for dinner today. So, yeah, I did not have tacos. I should have, but I didn't. I apologize.
I got to ask, what compels an adult to go to Buffalo Wild Wings on a random Sunday afternoon?
A gift card that my wife's parents got us for Christmas like a year and a half ago. So that's the answer. I got boneless wings with Asian zing, and then I think it's honey garlic, like some new sauce. It is what it is. You know, it's Buffalo Wild Wings.
Yeah, you're not like the spice god like I am. I like the heat.
I do not.
Bring me the heat. Bring me the heat, I say. Bring me the heat. Ohio State is starting to bring the heat, Andrew, in the recruitment of David Sanders. For the last 2 weeks on Talking Stuff, we had said like there was a plan in place for a May visit to occur. As the date of that was previously unknown. I found out on Wednesday that it was going to be the May 3rd through the 5th weekend. It came to fruition. He arrived on campus with his parents, Samantha and David Sr., on Friday afternoon, stayed until Sunday afternoon, the country's #1 ranked offensive tackle prospect, and a player that it sure does seem like everyone else is starting to catch up to the idea that Ohio State's a real player here.
Yeah, I think when all is said and done, this may go down as like the most important visit of the entire cycle. You know, getting him back on campus before the official visit. They needed to get him on campus. I have no idea where Ohio State stands compared to Clemson or Georgia or anybody else. But I mean, getting him back in a matter of, 3 weeks ago, he was there or whatever.
5 weeks ago. Yeah.
5 weeks ago. So 2 trips in a little over a month. That is not a bad thing for Justin Fry. And then we just got to see where things go in June. But yeah, this was a huge deal. And I mean, it seemed like it was going to be this quiet weekend, and then it kind of turned into like this sneaky big weekend.
Yeah, I mean, the reality here is that if one thing was accomplished in the Ohio State recruitment of David Sanders this weekend, it is that I think on a national level, no one is going to overlook Ohio State's chances in this fight from here. And I think that I don't know, maybe that's not even a good thing for Ohio State. Maybe you'd want people to not know that you were really on the level here. But talking to people around the trip, like they said, it went absolutely great. It was another home run visit for Ohio State, much like the one was 5 weeks ago, that I think really was an eye opener for his parents and for David Sanders Jr. This trip happens on a weekend where Ohio State had no spring game, no spring practice, no student appreciation day like the last time David was in town. This is a visit that was designed specifically to allow David Sanders and his family to spend time talking and getting to know Justin Fry better and spending more time with Ryan Day and the rest of the Ohio State coaching staff. It's about showing the Ohio State offense and saying, yeah, you may really like Tennessee, and you may be able to say that Tennessee put Darnell Wright in the first round 2 years ago, but it is a all pass all the time offense. You're not going to teach you how to be a complete offensive lineman. It is a visit again to say, if you think Ohio State is too far from home, let's pull out a map and show you where Tuscaloosa, Alabama is, so you can figure out that it's exactly it's closer to Columbus than it is to Tuscaloosa from Charlotte. And it's really an opportunity for Ohio State to get a sense of where they stand in this fight, Andrew. And again, to me, the biggest takeaway from this trip, knowing that there is a June 21st through the 23rd official visit coming for David Sanders, the Buckeyes will get his final official visit. Like, knowing that is coming to get him back on campus, it sort of feels like a shot across the bow of college football to say we are definitely in this battle.
Yeah. And, a month ago, I was firmly against the idea of this even happening for Ohio State, or really, I just didn't see it happening at all. Maybe it doesn't happen, but now I'm like very much firmly following this with keen interest, thinking that Justin Fry might be able to reel this one in. I will say, like, I was kind of shocked that it took until Saturday night for this to actually come out. We got that Twitter post of him standing next to Justin Fry on campus there. And somebody asked about it on the message board and you answered, but I'll give you a chance to speak here as well. Like, what's the benefit for a recruit in taking like a top secret silent visit, kind of like the one that David Sanders just did?
I think it's important to understand that it's not top secret for them. They just aren't a talkative family. They're not out there seeking attention. They're not out there posting all of their visits, all their travels on the internet. If somebody had known that they were visiting and asked, I tried to get permission to like publicize the trip, but because I have just not had a really good opportunity to connect with his parents, I wasn't able to get that. And so I didn't want to report it until I knew the family was okay with it. But the fact is, Saturday night, it's 9:00. Somebody takes a Bigfoot style photo of Justin Fry and David Sanders on campus at Ohio State. And all of a sudden it's like, okay, I guess people are going to find out about this. And within 20 minutes, like, the kids' social media is blowing up, and like, okay, now then you see 16 different, recruiting media insiders. I can confirm tag. I can confirm tag David Sanders. I can confirm. Like it's not necessary, and not everyone wants that experience, and not everyone wants that overbearing, always like balls to the wall. Like, I don't need this on my life on a Saturday night. I'm not sure what's going on with the internet here. We seem to be doing some struggles. Is that yours or mine?
I'm fine. I can see you fine. You're kind of fuzzy. I'm not, though.
Yeah, you keep blacking out on my end. I'm not sure what's going on here. We'll just do our best to monitor that as we go through here. But I mean, sometimes kids just want to be left alone, and I feel like it's not something where they were intentionally trying to hide it so much as it is just not publicizing it, because that's just not their way. It's but it's a big trip for Ohio State. And I think the most important thing here is, as I said, you've got now, this is the second trip in 5 weeks. You've got another visit coming next month. Tavian St. Clair, his family were supposed to be over there at the school on Saturday to spend some time. There was a delay in some of the scheduling that day, so that didn't happen. But for Ohio State, ultimately, this is a trip that moves the needle, much like the one did a few weeks ago. And now you have the Buckeyes in a battle. And I think it's actually, and I know that there's a lot of conversation nationally about Georgia and Clemson. I'm starting to hear a little bit more about Tennessee and South Carolina as the maybe the leaders in the battle here. Although Clemson is certainly involved. I have not heard as much about Georgia recently, but that could mean nothing. We know how the Bulldogs operate. They're always going to be a threat. So it is fascinating to try to sort out exactly how the pecking order goes for David Sanders, because for the very same reason, like, he doesn't talk about it.
Yeah, this just seems like one of those old-fashioned recruitments where nobody knows where he's going to end up. And we don't see too many of those these days. It seems like, just, given the propensity for a lot of these players to talk and social media and all that kind of stuff. So maybe it's just one of those things where nobody has any clue where he's going to go, and we'll just find out in June, July, December, whenever.
Yeah, it's coming. I mean, it's going to happen. I imagine that David Sanders, knowing what we do know about him, it seems like he's going to want to wrap this up by the end of June. So we'll see if that happens. And again, I do not understand what's going on with the internet, so I am sorry about that. I cannot figure out why the internet doesn't want to play along. All right. Hopefully that has been fixed. We'll see about if there's any, other issues. But for Ohio State, bottom line, Buckeyes are in the fight. Clemson, South Carolina, Tennessee, Georgia, all very much in it. I don't know about Alabama at this point. Haven't heard much about the Crimson Tide, but we do know that Alabama is starting to heat up a little bit on the recruiting trail under new head coach Kalen DeBoer. And that's why it's particularly interesting that Ohio State has a commitment from the number one ranked player in Alabama in Naeem Offord. And this weekend hosted the number, I think, like 2 and 3 ranked players in the state, or should be 2 and 3 ranked players in the state. But I guess they're not. I guess they're rated a little lower than that, but I don't know how. There's a lot of talent in Alabama, Andrew.
Yeah.
Number 5, weak side defensive end, Zion Grady. Number 8, defensive tackle from Opelika, Alabama, Malik Autry. Autry committed to Auburn since February of 2023. I was looking at his online recruiting profile and how many times he's visited places. And I think he's been to Auburn like 76 times. So it certainly was a surprise to see Malik Autry on campus. We knew that Grady was visiting. Zion Grady was a player that when Ohio State offered him in February, he told me right away that he wanted to get a visit set up. He was very interested in the Mofford's decision, and it sort of perked up his ears like, hey, maybe this is a real opportunity. I talked to both Zion and Malik Autry throughout the day on Sunday, and so there's the David Sanders side of things where a kid just doesn't really talk much. And then I don't know if Zion Grady and Malik Autry are always this talkative, or if it was just that they are blown away by the Ohio State visit and felt like they should really, lean into it. But we saw Alan Clark, Ohio State's assistant defensive line coach, post like a vague, nut icon emoji. My internet's doing that again. I can't really be sure of why that's happening, but neither one of those two in the conversation that I had with them gave any indication that they were, making a commitment. What I did get, what I think is interesting, especially with Malik Autry, the Auburn commit, there's a lot of speculation that he's basically choosing between Auburn and Florida, but he's got other official visits set up, and one of them was to Oregon for the weekend of June 21st through the 23rd. He told me that he's canceled that Oregon visit and will come to Ohio State instead that weekend, which is the same weekend that Zion Grady is coming, which is the same weekend that Naeem Offord is coming, which is the same weekend that David Sanders is coming. Now Andrew's video is gone. I'm not sure what's going on with this internet, but it's driving me cuckoo. And we're just going to keep plugging away because I don't know what's lost, what's saved, what's not. So, Andrew, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
You just shoot. So anyway, we'll see if Andrew gets back here. I don't know what's going on. We're just going to keep doing our best. So Autry is canceling the Oregon visit he had scheduled for the June 21st weekend, and now we'll visit Ohio State instead. The thing that he really, this is a kid who's 6'6", 323 pounds. Like, he's a huge defensive tackle and a player from the South that I don't think Ohio State in previous years would have even tried to go get.
You're gone again.
I'm back. This is madness, and I'm sorry. I don't know what's going on. I have no issues with my internet right now at all, according to my computer. So it's what we do. So, Andrew, is it worth the effort to go get these kids in Alabama, or is it just do you think it's one of those things where Ohio State's just going to host a kid once or twice and then he's still going to stay in the South?
I think it's worth the effort. 3-4 years ago, I would have said no. Nick Saban's no longer there. Naeem Offord is committed. I saw his mother or some of his other family members actively recruiting these guys to Ohio State already. So I say keep swinging. I'm more kind of fascinated in Autry just because there's not a lot of those interior defensive linemen out there right now, whereas there's several, edge type of defenders. They've already got 2 committed. But them canceling that Oregon trip and coming back to Ohio State in June, that seems like a significant development.
Yeah, and Zion Grady told me he's coming on that same weekend, the June 21st weekend. And as I look at his profile on Rivals.com, that weekend for him currently is listed as an official visit to Georgia. So I don't know if he's canceling that Georgia trip or if he's finding a way to mash all these things up together. Grady, 6'5", 225 pound, weak side defensive end, more of your traditional committed to Alabama previously. I don't know, so it's not like the Crimson Tide and Auburn are not involved here, because they clearly are. But one thing that I thought was interesting talking to Malik Autry, I just asked him, you've been to Auburn 6 times. What's the biggest thing that Ohio State did that was different, or what was different? And he basically just said, if you just look at the number of guys they've produced, it's just not like that at Auburn. So the eyes and ears are fully open for those kids. And I really think that it would be an opportunity for Ohio State to expand their footprint in the South here. And I think they're going to keep doing it.
Yeah, like I said, just keep swinging away. Nick Saban's no longer in Tuscaloosa, and we'll see if Larry Johnson can get it done.
Speaking of getting it done, when is Trey McNutt going to get it done? That's the big question I have in the state of Ohio. And I'm starting to get a little bit of a weird feeling about the whole Trey McNutt recruitment. And I don't like when I get those weird feelings. And I'm hoping I'm wrong, because I love when I'm wrong about things, because I get tagged in a lot of random tweets about it. But Trey McNutt was back on campus this weekend also. So he's, we've got Zion Grady, you've got, David Sanders, you've got Malik Autry, and then you've got Trey McNutt. And Trey has been all over the country in the last couple of weeks. He's seen every school. Ohio State, like, these visits are really designed as sort of just a check-in to be like, hey, where are we? Are we still good? Are we still where we need to be relationship-wise? And that seems to be the case. But I do get the sense, Andrew, that Trey McNutt may want to go longer in his recruitment than Ohio State wants to wait for Trey McNutt. Does that? And I don't know if there's a way. It seems like, how am I going to say this? Like, it makes almost perfect sense for Trey McNutt to commit to Ohio State, right? Like, he's an Ohio State legacy. He's from Ohio. Safety is a position that the Buckeyes feature in their defense. It is a position that they need to replace multiple guys after this year. They're trying to take 3 or 4 in this class because they're so thin at that spot. There's a lot of reasons Trey McNutt to Ohio State makes a lot of sense. But yet it seems like he just is much more interested in playing the field here, which is his right. But at the same time, Ohio State has to protect themselves. And I do wonder if there's going to be a conversation sometime in June after official visits that says, we need to know, or else your spot may not be saved.
Your Michigan internet is doing it again.
This is crazy to me. I do not understand what's going on. So if Fahim Delane wants in, or if Kinoa Winston wants in, or something, Jonah Williams, like how much can Ohio State, how much patience can they display?
I think that entire notion is just silly, because in a perfect world, we wake up tomorrow morning and Trey McNutt, Fahim Delane, Dorian Brew all just commit to Ohio State. But that's not the world we're living in. And McNutt's got his YouTube page and everything, and he's got some other things on the side he likes to do with his social media stuff. I think it'd be silly to not wait for a player of that caliber, a legacy, an in-state guy, all those things you said. I don't see the issue with waiting, even though you have 2 safeties committed already. Take 4, and hopefully he's one of the 4.
Yeah, but if 2 others that are like Fahim Delane and Kinoa Winston, again, like Fahim Delane is the number 2 ranked safety in the country behind Trey McNutt, according to the or let's see, the number 3 in the on 3 composites, right? So the industry rankings, you have Jonah Williams number 1, Trey McNutt number 2, Fahim Delane number 3, and Kinoa Winston number 11. If Jonah Williams and and Fahim Delane said they want in, do you tell one of them no?
No, you don't. But this all
not have that happen. But I'm just saying, like, things are. Ohio State's a pretty hot ticket.
This all goes back to a conversation we had maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago when I asked about taking Cody Haddad and the Jersey kid or whatever. What's his name? I can't even remember his name.
Sean Stewart.
Yeah, Stewart. That was kind of what I asked about a few weeks back when they took those guys with these other heavy hitters out there. And I'm not scoffing at those guys by any means, but I kind of wondered if we might kind of see a situation like this. But yeah. I hope they do whatever they can to get Trey McNutt and obviously Fahim Delane in the class sooner or later.
Yeah, I just think it may lead to an interesting conversation 6 weeks from now. Like, hey, here we are, Trey. You've made 4 or 5 official visits. You like, are you deciding this summer, or are you going into the fall? Because if he decides that he wants to extend this out to the fall, I think it really does open the door for Oregon or Texas A&M or whoever else he's really interested in to make a play. Because I just think that the Buckeyes are taking an approach that I don't want to say it's like a hardline stance or anything like that, but I do think that they're starting to understand that college football recruiting is different now, and waiting and letting other guys go while you wait for someone to, sow their wild oats, it just seems a little risky. That's all.
Yeah, it's a little risky, but at the same time,
it's worth it. But
yeah, but if they're going to be losing like half of their team after the upcoming season, and they do end up with a class that's approaching 30 guys, like we've talked about in the past, I don't know. I just like to think there's some way maybe it's all a moot point. Maybe they talk with him in June and he just shuts it down. But I hope this doesn't become an issue with their safety numbers.
Yeah, and I think what makes it interesting is that Trey McNutt is athletic enough to be a corner. Also, and Dorian Brew is a swing guy, someone who can play safety or corner. And what's interesting now, especially with after Blake Woodby's visit to Oregon, and now some rumblings that maybe his spot in the 2025 class isn't entirely secure. Whether that's his decision or Ohio State's decision is still sort of, I'm still trying to parse through that, but it does seem like there's at least a question mark as to whether or not he's going to remain in the class from here. No announcement has been made. Nothing public as there hasn't been any decision that I've heard given to the staff. But I know that there's at least a concern that it could be coming. But like if Blake Woodby were out, and then that opens the door for you to recruit Trey McNutt as more of a swing guy. Maybe that helps open up the way that he feels about his place in the class. We already talked in the past about how that may be the way to mitigate some of the recruiting deficit that they maybe find themselves in with Dorian Brew right now. But it does lead to some interesting conversations, I think, because I don't know exactly how you navigate this with those two guys in the state while there's two spots left and you have Delane and Winston and Jonah Williams and a corner who I talked about the other day in one guy that I've heard the name of is Jameer Joseph in New Jersey as a corner. Ohio State really likes, also not really highly discussed, but someone that maybe is worth paying attention to. Like, how do you continue to juggle all of these balls? And I feel like I'm off rhythm right now because of the internet thing, and I don't like it. And I feel like this show, which had the potential to be juicy, is now feeling a little dried out because I'm like so annoyed that the internet has decided to just mess with me.
No, it's cool. It happens. But of those other names you're saying, how many of those are, besides Fahim Delane, we both would say Ohio State leads there. I mean, Jonah Williams is Ohio State second, third, maybe behind Texas and Oklahoma. And then Kanoa Winston, I know he visited Michigan not long ago. I mean, we haven't talked a lot about him, so I admittedly have no idea where things are at there. But it's just seemed like McNutt and Delane have been the top of the board for so long. So
yeah, they are. And that's, I think that's still the case. But I just wonder if he wants to push this back through the summer, if the Buckeyes start to get skittish. That's all. Now, the same thing when we're talking about Blake Woodby, like if there's any uncertainty about his commitment, whether on his end, as I said, or on the Ohio State end, like, is there a point when you just cut ties and say, hey, we're not going to continue to play this game, knowing that there's this uncertain feeling out there? And now Andrew's video is gone again. And that's probably my fault because my internet is doing this for some reason, but
yeah, I'm still here.
Insane to me. Insane. But what you have here is a moment that, you have the conversation, or you may have to have that conversation with McNutt at the end of June. But if Blake Woodby is on the fence one way or another, like at some point, it may be worth having that conversation with him too, to say, hey, are you in or are you out? And not playing this game of we'll just wait and see what happens.
Do you think the Ohio State staff has already had that conversation with Blake Woodby?
I don't know that they have. I think that they've probably made it clear that they were not entirely thrilled. Like if, I don't know. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like that I know exactly what the conversation was, but I do know that there's at least some wariness about the, strength of that commitment right now. And so where the wariness came from, I don't really know. But I know that it's at least on some shaky ground. So, but things have been on shaky ground before, and you can fix it if you want to, and we'll see what happens. But I don't know that it's going to be fixed. But like my internet, for example, on shaky ground all evening for some stupid reason, even though it says it's working fine. It's just this app that we use for these podcasts is not playing along very nice. And so because of that, we're going to speed things along here, get into our 4-minute offense, and let Andrew go at any other questions or things that are on his mind about recruiting and Ohio State football. Busy week.
Yeah. So when Carlos Loughlin arrived, obviously we've talked ad nauseum about its impact on Jordan Davison. But we also talked about some other offers that went out. De'Aaron Hill was offered. It sounds like he's going to commit to Oregon next Friday, May 10th. Last week on Loughlin's Twitter, you posted it, I believe. The tweet with him with the Isaiah West kid from Pennsylvania who's committed to Kentucky. I guess, do you get the feel that that's one to pay attention to? We've talked about maybe taking 3 backs in this class, or do you have any thoughts on that situation?
First, we'll start with Jordan Davison. Obviously, he released his official top 4 on Saturday. Ohio State, Oregon, Alabama, Michigan. I don't believe it's really beyond a 2-team race. I think it's Ohio State and Oregon there for Jordan Davison. Ohio State still feels comfortable and confident, but Oregon is surging, man. Like they're doing a lot of things and a lot of things very well. And they got the last visit before the official visit season will start, and by having him on campus for their spring game. So it's still one to watch there. I don't know that I would put that one entirely to bed. But yeah, I think it's more and more clear that Ohio State wants 3 running backs in the class of 2025. If they can arrange it, we're going to see some decisions being made. And we already talked about Bo Jackson and Jordan Davison a lot last week, so I'm not going to dive that far into it. But a guy like Isaiah West, who's a Kentucky commitment, St. Joe's Prep in Philadelphia, same school as Marvin Harrison, Kyle McCord, like they know the area well. Loughlin was recruiting Isaiah West while he was at Oregon. And so there is a pre-existing relationship. I expect Isaiah West to visit Ohio State in the near future. And so as long as that happens, then it's certainly one to watch. Now, the question is, how do you balance things with guys like Jordan Davison, Bo Jackson, and say, we're going to take 3 running backs, and here's why? Because it may make a ton of sense to those guys. Like, oh, okay, the Buckeyes may end up having only 2 scholarship running backs on the roster after this season with Sam Williams-Dixon and James. But that doesn't matter to kids who are coming into college. Like it may make sense, but like what makes sense isn't always what makes me happy, So if I'm Jordan Davison, if I'm Bo Jackson, if I'm, Isaiah West or any running back in the country, the conversation when you're told, hey, we're going to bring in 3 guys, you have to be very nuanced with that. And you have to really be able to thread that needle in a way that I don't know that we've seen coaches, that's a hard needle to thread is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, that makes sense. And just kind of speaking of West and Kentucky, kind of worth reminding everyone that Marquise Davis, Cleveland Heights running back, committed to Kentucky, not Michigan, last week. I think it was Tuesday or Wednesday. A wise man once predicted that to happen, I believe, about a week ago on this very show. So that could impact the Kentucky numbers game and Isaiah West. And I don't know, there's all kinds of moving pieces with that, it seems like.
It could. And like, I still fully expect Marquise Davis to make an official visit to Michigan. I'm not going to be surprised if he still ends up at Michigan, but I do think that it's worth noting that Kentucky has done a really good job in Ohio. And so it was not an entire surprise when you realized that Marquise Davis sincerely trusted Vince Marrow in what they were saying. So we'll see how that impacts Isaiah West or anyone else. But from the Ohio State perspective, the goal seems like it's going to be 3 running backs. I don't know if that's something that you can count on actually happening, but that's where it seems like they want to go.
I mean, if you go down the depth chart and just look at what they're going to have on the roster next year, like it makes total sense to take 3. So, I mean, I hope that's what they do. It just makes sense.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, though. Like, what makes sense for the Ohio State football roster doesn't necessarily mean that a player who's going to be involved in a 3-man class wants that to be the case. You know, like, you have to find 3 guys that understand your position and your need as a program, and hope that measures up with their own personal willingness to be a part of it. Because like that Ohio State saying we're going to take 3 running backs, I guarantee you that's going to be something that Alabama and Georgia are talking to Bo Jackson about when he's on his official visit to Athens or Tuscaloosa. That is certainly something Oregon is going to be talking about, even though Oregon's going to land De'Ara Hill next week and very well likely could take 3 themselves. Like that is something to pay attention to. So it's an interesting conversation, but from what we've heard of Carlos Lachlan so far, like these guys trust him. He's been as direct and upfront with everyone as he can be, and that's all you can really ask for. So we'll see. I mean, I still think Ohio State's in the lead position for Bo Jackson and for Jordan Davison, but it is not something that I think you can just put in ink, especially with visits to Bama and Georgia coming for Bo.
Right. Last thing, real quick. Georgia offensive lineman Josh Petty was on campus last week, Wednesday, Thursday, whatever day that was. Anything to watch there, or worth watching, not worth watching, or what's going on there?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Josh Petty from Roswell, I think it's Fellowship Christian School in Roswell. He's the number 2 ranked interior lineman in the country, according to the On3 consensus rankings, which I think are probably the most accurate to use in these settings. What you get out of him, he's a guy that has 7 official visits scheduled for June. Ohio State was not one of them. He took his unofficial visit to Ohio State and now said he's looking into seeing if he can get a visit scheduled for an official. The schools that he had already planned officials with were all the schools that his older sister, who's graduating this year, was looking into for school. I don't know what she's chosen, but it seems like that's something that matters. But Ohio State offered him, I think, at the end of August. So the conversation and the relationship with Justin Fry has been there. It's just his family was focused on getting a sense of where his sister was going to school, and then they're going to start looking at schools that Josh may be interested in that aren't directly correlated to what his sister was looking at. So yes, definitely worth watching. If I had to pick between Josh Petty and Andrew Stargell, the other Roswell, Georgia offensive lineman that Ohio State offered a week ago, like which one's more worth paying attention to, it's probably Stargell. He visits Ohio State this coming weekend on May 10th and 11th. So that's a big first trip for him. He's a 3-star guy that Ohio State was really, really high on. And so he's probably more likely. But I think the more things move along with David Sanders, like if you have, and again, it's a big if, I understand that, but if you have Carter Lowe and David Sanders as your offensive tackles in this class, everything else that you do becomes a whole heck of a lot easier. And whether that's a guy like Josh Petty, whether that's a guy like Douglas Utu out at Bishop Gorman in Las Vegas, like those other highly ranked guys that Ohio State has been recruiting, but they're sort of just trudging along in the periphery. Like those become very real conversations when you can say, hey, do you want to be a part of this? And so, I think you're just trying to figure out at this point which of these guys are actually interested. I did talk to Josh Petty after his visit. He said he loved it. He said it checked all the boxes. His family was like very into the academic side of things. So mom was very impressed with that side. Dad was very impressed with the football side. Like there's a lot of momentum, but it feels like they're getting into that one a little bit late, considering that there's 7 official visits scheduled elsewhere.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I think that's really about all I had, honestly.
I'm sorry about the internet, folks. I don't know what's going on. I don't know how that's going to affect the quality of the show on YouTube. We're going to do our best to make sure that any issues are ironed out. So sorry about that in advance. But yeah, I hope everyone enjoyed their Cinco de Mayo. And maybe you can just pass off the internet issues as you had one too many margaritas and you just keep blacking out every 7 or 8 minutes. You just have a blackout moment, and then you wake up, and then I'm there looking at you, talking, telling you to drink safely and to make sure that you don't ever get salt on the rim of your margarita, because it's not worth it. For Andrew Ellis, I'm Jeremy Birmingham. This has been Talking Stuff. And again, I'm sorry about the internet, but I don't control the internet. Goodbye.